Welcome back to Unfiltered Feels. Today we're hearing part 2 of the story of dad guilt. And this next story, I think, will resonate with a lot of men and even might give their families some tips and tricks to help them. And you might even learn something new today. So without further ado, here we go. So I'm Allie. Thank you for coming. So let's start at the beginning. What did becoming a dad mean to you?
Well, I'm going back a few years now. I think what it meant in my mind at first was a new beginning, something for myself personally, of not having that connection that I always felt as I got older, of like that you could have with a dad, and spending the time and just kind of being present. That whole, I guess, therapeutic background that I have, kind of taught me and led me to the thought of, it'd be really great if, and this is how I kind of, when I would talk to my wife about it, because with her career of, this is a great opportunity of, we talked about that dream of maybe not using daycare as much and maybe not at all. And this could be our ticket through it of, this the time I was in grad school. And so a few years before we even had kids, but it was always kind of brought up of, you can continue your career in accounting and finance, and I can be at home with the kids during the day and then still try to operate a private practice at night and give myself the best of both worlds. So I was very ambitious. And then when you have kids, my first kid, was just trying to find that balance. It was a little challenging at times. And also learning too more about, men's postpartum and what I was going through, being isolated and alone with the kids, and then going from that to seeing patients and then coming home and trying to do it all over again the next day. So I think there's definitely a gleefulness to it in the beginning of like, this is the chance, but then when you're actually with it, it presents a whole set of problems that you never, no book or nothing teaches you until there it is, and you're trying to deal with that day to day. And how it kind of ties in with Dad O'Neill is just that noticing and feeling of being disconnected from the world now. Of, I wasn't in an office every day. I bring up a couple times every third or fourth episode, I feel like, in my show, that it all started with my wife's mom's club in town, that they would meet in different playgrounds and have different events. And when she was going back to work, of, just mentioning to them of, hey, my husband's going to be taking over, so he'll be there next Tuesday. And that was, even to her surprise, of, no men. We don't, even it's a playground, even though we know Mike and, great guy and therapist and everything, like, anyone that understands just, emotions and understanding what's going on, not your stereotypical, I guess, kind of guy at times I have for myself in my mind. But yeah, that really hit me hard. I was like, all right, I can't really talk to my friends because they don't get it, because they're just doing their own thing in life, and mom's clubs don't want me. And as we kind of joked of like, well, start your own. I started looking around and seeing that there are, there's a home dad network that has different groups in different towns, but there was really none in my area. And yeah, just wanted to kind of have that as a place to utilize, what, even this first question of, what the thought was, right? It was processing it in your mind of, as a guy, it meant a lot. And I think it means a lot to many men, but I think it brings a different level of nuance and difference in this day and age, right? Of like, here's what I thought it is, here's what it's going to be like in the 21st century, with working with families and seeing that, of the difficulty with social media and being online and being on, video games, and how much different that was than my own dad. I was like, they didn't have to deal with that. You didn't have to deal with as many things as I think that is on our plates for moms and dads. So, yeah.
Right. And I like that you mentioned about men's postpartum, because, you know, as a woman, you're always told, oh, just watch out for postpartum depression and anxiety. Just watch out for it.
Mm-hmm.
And for us as a woman, you they tell you that, but they don't really tell you what that is, right? You have no idea until you're in it. And so I like that you brought that up because I think that a lot of men and probably a lot of women don't know that that's a thing. And
Hmm.
when you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to be a dad, that is one of the emotions you have no idea you're going to experience. So
Hmm.
I think that's a really great thing to bring up. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I think it's
and then,
widely underreported or just even discussed. I mean, even for myself being in healthcare, how little even I knew about it, surprisingly, of experiencing that as my wife went back to work. Of why am I feeling so depressed? Why am I just feeling so run down? Why am I feeling things that were obviously different on some levels than what my wife was going through, but similar on other levels of I would just break down and cry. I wouldn't, just understand why. And for myself, doing my own research and learning of, oh, this is a thing, and having it, I still feel widely underreported or understood, at, even in my field. And that's right, definitely something that needs to be mentioned more. Just even hearing that out loud, right? Just of, I feel like the positive aspect is it everything's not obviously known of like what to expect with postpartum and women even, but at least I feel like it's socially known and talked about in the medical field with the doctors of here's some of the symptoms. At least you know what you're looking for. With men of you don't even think about it because you're not even told that this is a thing or what the symptoms could be or what it might be. So yeah.
right. And I think it's also a good thing for all the women who are listening to check in with their partner because especially some men don't show any emotion at all, and we have no idea what's going on behind closed doors if we don't ask. So sometimes just trying to be in tune and realize that you're not the only one probably feeling the way that you're feeling. It might be different in a sense, but it's all the same.
Mhm.
um Did you ever have, or do you still have any moments where you feel like maybe you're failing as a dad or you have failed as a dad? And if you did, how did you get to the other side of that feeling?
I think to start with that answering of that question is it kind of goes maybe I'll answer a question with a question at first kind of thing, and then so it's always funny to me as a therapist working with families for many years that you'd get those honest questions from moms or dads of how do I know I'm being a good parent? How do I feel like I'm failing a lot? I feel like I'm just not not being what I want to be or what I should be or could be. And I always kind of say of what I've learned is by asking the question, you're already 80% there at least, if not more. That you're at least having those thoughts. So when you ask me that question, it's almost like that auto response of like, yeah, I know every now and then, but being honest of it goes through my mind every day. It's something that's,
Right.
am I doing this right? Am I screwing up? If did I, not every day am I always calm and present. If I say things out of line, if I do things out of line, I think the bigger piece for me is the level of acceptance and awareness of you're gonna mess up. And I always try to frame it with both my boys. They're 8 and will be 6 in a couple weeks. I try to talk to them on their level as they get older, but of letting them know of, we're together all day, every day sometimes, like now in the summertime. And we're not always going to be happy with each other, and that's okay. We're not always going to feel our best. We're not always going to communicate well. We're going to make mistakes. So I find it more important of the showing them and hopefully teaching them. We'll find out in a 10 years from now, see how this goes, but of helping them be aware of you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things you don't mean to somebody that you love and care about, and just recognizing yourself and apologizing and knowing that, you know, some days I do feel guilty, of maybe I didn't tell them, how much they mean to me, or if I did get upset, if I did, something I told them 3 times and I go to the room and put them in the timeout or punishment of maybe I went too far. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I shouldn't have done. Maybe I should have listened more. And it's weird in a psychological sense that learned behavior is always right there. It's always like that default, and always trying to be a step ahead of it is its own challenges every day. So yeah, I think every day some level of guilt or just feeling like I screwed up. But on the flip side, I always try to keep a level of awareness, through it. If I catch myself or if I see even after, to kind of let them know and see if, hey, we're humans. We're not going to be this picture perfect family. And that's not going to be, you know, daddy comes from the Northeast and I say a lot of swears that just naturally come out of my mouth. So it just kind of happens. And bless them that they do, they do understand if, these words can only be said in this house. They can't be said in school or around other people. So it's just, trying to learn and teach. I think that's the biggest takeaway from that one side of it to the other side. And that's where I see the growth and opportunities there to not beat yourself up, but, that's what the kids, I think, really truly need sometimes is just honesty, just giving them the ability to see that we're humans and we're vulnerable, and, mom and dad make mistakes too.
Right. I think that's great. Um, my husband said something to me the other day, and it was along the lines of, we're learning. This is the first, he said, I don't know how to do this. This is the first time I've done this.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes something so simple like that is like, oh, right. Like, we haven't done this before. We have no idea. And then what works for one kid does not work for the other kid. So it's like it's a learning process, and some, even though it's very hard to remember sometimes that your child's also learning, but also giving yourself the grace that you are also learning with them side by side, step by step. So I think that's real great to, that you're showing the honesty, that you're showing that it is okay, that,
Well,
not everything's going to be perfect.
I'll I'll add one little caveat nuance to that as well. Of, for me personally speaking, of being a neurodivergent. I know that the entity of that, but you know, ADD, and now I'm also learning too of, some there's probably some autism spectrum in there too. Like my oldest son is diagnosed on the spectrum, and that challenges of me being a parent to that, and then my other son being a neurotypical, no challenges, no difficulty at all. And then using myself of, knowing how I feel like of spending 20 years of my adult life understanding who I was, what I was, and what this diagnosis was, and how I can go about living my life for me. And now just putting two kids on top of that, I'm like, oh, this is a whole another realm of how do I parent? How do I be who I want to be, but with all my own personal challenges and things that I deal with too. And right, having two kids that are very different is, you know, all the books you can read and all the continuing education classes I can take in my world of therapy, it still doesn't answer more than a quarter of the questions. So there's still a lot of things that are, you just gotta, right, learn by doing, for sure.
Right. This next question, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But from your upbringing, um, you know, sometimes there are parts of our parents that we admire and we would like to bring forward. And I'm sure there are also some parts that we would like to stay very far away from.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you have that experience or not, but if you do, um, can you just kind of elaborate how you try to be cognizant of that and try not to bring, or maybe do bring, depending on which way you're going here,
Mhm.
into your adult parenting life?
Yeah, I just was touching on it a little bit briefly there before, but um, not wanting to repeat the learned behavior. I think the understanding of my dad, that I think he saw what his dad did to him, and it kind of goes back of there wasn't a lot of closeness, there wasn't a lot of warmth, there wasn't a lot of you might get an attaboy here or there, but dad was there after work at some point and left in the morning, and he might be in business trips here and there, so it wasn't um the closeness wasn't, I guess, what I personally felt would be there. And that's one thing that I always wanted for when I had kids. Of I know what it felt like to not have that warmth and closeness in the home. So wanting to try to, and that kind of touches on my being honest with the kids, of just wanting to be real, be honest with them, give them hugs, show them affection, show them that I care. And yeah, I think that just trying to break the cycle is very right. We hear that a lot. We want to accomplish that, but the actual doing, the day-to-day grind of that is very challenging, because right, it is that default of even myself of I've learned how to kind of just be on my own so much. So if I get in a place where I'm just oversensoried and just can't take it, if I just want to be alone, I don't want to be around emotion, and my kids around me, I just need to be alone. So there's still continued learning. It's always will be. It's funny of how 18 years of your life impacts the next 50 years of trying to undo all of that. And that a lot of mantras in my mind in regards to that of, all right, I got 18 years to help them and guide them, right? Because I personally think for me it took me until my 30s to kind of understand healthy relationships, healthy self-care, what I wanted in a relationship, what I wanted for my future with a partner and a family. And so I think it's its own journey, and it takes time, and each day I think brings up new challenges, not just with the family that you have, but just talking about this just makes me think of, as I've gotten older, of how I kind of always wished and felt that distance maybe would have gone away as an adult, if now that we're not, father and son always will be, but not like little kid, and that still
Mm-hmm.
just never happened. And keeping that in my mind too, of what you can't control and what you can't, and trying to, I guess, in a sense, not for myself, but build a relationship with my kids that hopefully will last. Right? If I'm aware teenage years are going to be rough, and the 20s could be rough, but hopefully being that parent that when the circle comes back around, that I'm going to be there. I'm going to be continuing to reach out to them and show them that I'm always going to be there and care for them and love them to death, and whether they want me to or not at times. But I'm going to be what I felt like I wanted, and hopefully I can give and provide to them what they want and what they need throughout their years to come.
Right. And I just kind of wanted to circle back earlier of how you mentioned that, you were going to go to the girls' club, so to say, to be with the moms while you were taking care of the boys.
Mhm.
Um, did you ever find a dad group, or how did you? I mean, obviously that probably didn't feel a whole great at the time, that you're kind of being excluded when maybe you really did need someone to speak with, and at that point it could have just been whoever would have listened.
Mhm.
Um, how did you find men that you could speak to, or do you feel like maybe it's still just one of those things where men are supposed to be strong and they're not supposed to have feelings?
I think it's getting better. I there is, if you look online, there are stay-at-home dad clubs and organizations that I have seen around here where I live, and not as many in 2017. So it's definitely been an increase since then, which is good. I still think the prevailing thought is, um, yeah, men. I think we're kind of stuck. I always kind of go back and forth in this in my mind. It's a good question, and not to get too into the weeds here, but just the summary of it is, I've always felt like, because my first kid was born in 2017, that was a big time with the Me Too movement, and kind of giving a glaring example of this is the toxicity that we want out of our culture, and rightfully so. For pick a person and pick what they did, and I've kind of that old guard out of all right. Now it's that thing of like, what are we replacing it with, right? What are we like? We want men that are want to be more work-life balance, more involved in the kids' lives, and I think a lot of men and dads want that, but I don't think that there's those examples. I think we kind of got stuck after that of, and I don't even know what the answer is to like what could have been done or what socially conscious kind of things could have been put out there, and you know they put a lot of stuff about mental health and state governments and federal and things like that. You hear and see a lot, but not a lot about men's mental health or dad's mental health. It's so I still think there's that gap. I think there's, if you're searching for it, you can find some things, but those are kind of hit and miss from my experience of if they actually go on like a meetup at a playground or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's in my mind of why I created Dad O'Neill is something to kind of be, you know, through YouTube, but also hopefully eventually into workshops and retreats of here's a place you can go. Here's a place we can learn and try different things. And, through my knowledge and experiences and other people that I've worked with and met that kind of work in similar realms that I do, that, we can kind of pave a new path. Because I think that there is still, I think a lot of men struggle with, they try to maybe want to be more involved, and then maybe not even like me, they got pushed away of just even, I think the biggest thing that I've personally seen is you just don't have anybody else like you. No better way of saying it. Of if I go out with 4 or 5 other guys, it's I worked all week. I took the kid to the baseball practice, and that was that. It's never more involved. It's never more of, boy, let me tell you, of you know, trying a new food with the 4-month old this week, or that those things that you want to think about, you want to share because you've been home, but you really don't find a place to have that opportunity, or you know that acceptance of this is what the new normal is. We've gone from 2017 where we kind of set the example of this is no longer acceptable and this is what toxic masculinity is, and I think there's still that acceptance piece, because I saw personally those examples that I've seen plenty of times online from different people on TikTok or Instagram or like a media platform, but are of going into a coffee shop of, oh, it's nice that you took the day off and took the kids out. Like, no, it's mine. It's just Tuesday. Or go to the grocery store, that they're amazed that you're able to do it. Or just popped in my mind of, when I took the kids to get fitted for suits for my brother's wedding, of like, oh, that's great. You're able to put suits on the kids. Like, yeah, I can dress them every day. That's what I do. So I still think there's that male and female kind of social acceptance of this is the norm. I think we still kind of go to that default sometimes of, take the suit example of like, yeah, she'll take the kids, right? Not even, I think it kind of comes down for guys of challenging yourself. And sometimes we want to go for what's easier, what just kind of comes natural, as opposed to, I'll take them to get fitted for suits. That's not going to be easy, but I can bribe them like you can and get them ice cream afterwards, and everyone could be okay, minus a few tears and maybe a bump in the head somehow accidentally from hitting a door, but no worse for the wear. I think sometimes too, if to that even point of we get judged, I always feel like there was always that sense of people watching, right? Of like, if there's 2 boys and if they're being rowdy, if their mom was here, they wouldn't be acting like this. Or that kind of feeling, that kind of, even whispering being said of, oh, it's because, my oldest son who's on the spectrum just has a tantrum, and I can manage it, I think, pretty well and have it under control. But I feel that guilt and shame of, I got to get him under control now because everyone's looking at me. Of dad took the kids to the grocery store, he has no idea what he's doing, and now one's crying and screaming in the car and in the cart, and yeah, it always kind of set me back of like, man, I know what I'm doing is right, and I know how to handle this. I've dealt with this 1,000 times, but it's that social cues and that social acceptance, I think, just needs to be presented as more like, not just even like accepting as a start of it, but just of acknowledging of, that there are more women that have breadwinner type jobs now, and so it's
That's true.
better and easier for men to, if you want to have that opportunity to spend it with your kids, and yeah, it's almost that mommy role is still kind of downgraded, unfortunately, and that is part of that too. Of that it's not just cooking and cleaning and washing clothes and changing diapers. It's it's makes the house go round. Makes it, it's a lot, and I think that's part of it too. Of the role of mom has always kind of been treated less than, unfortunately, never given its due rightful place. So.
I'm hoping that now that, you mentioned earlier, like your parents and my parents, you know, they did what they knew and so on and so forth and back and back. And maybe, I feel like our generation and now even the younger generation has kind of become more um, prevalent, important, out there about mental health. Um, so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, this age range that we're in right now, the older, but maybe not our parents older, I think we're kind of in a unique situation because, yes, it would be very easy for us to just learn what we know and just keep on going on. But we're
Mm-hmm.
also the ones that are trying to change that for our children. And
Mm-hmm.
my hope is that by the time our children are grown, that they would have seen us and then it starts that new, well, this is what my parents did, and it just gets better from
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, people, their 30s, 40s, were in a very unique spot. Um, and, sometimes I know a couple of people that their parents, oh, you need to man up, you need to be a man. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just not it
Right.
because I as much as it is nice to know that I have a strong husband, it's also nice to know that he's also caring. And
Right.
you have to
He's
be able
he's a
to.
human. Yeah. That he's not just
Right.
sucking
Yeah.
up. That he feels comfortable talking to me. Feels comfortable, being emotional, and I cry every time, even though my little one is going into first grade now. When I drive by his preschool, I was like, oh, that was 2 years of my life, picking him up, dropping him off, and still makes me teary eyed. But it's just
Yeah.
being
It's
being
it's
honest.
a big deal.
I think you're definitely right that we have the chance and are providing that chance to break that cycle to give them healthier choices. Right. I think the generation I was a part of um, very much didn't, toxicity, these kind of terms, triggering. These are terms that were just not things of what are you talking about? It's different now of understanding more, understanding better, that we're able to communicate, the ability to show that we can be vulnerable, we can change. I think one thing I'll add to that though is what I see from my world in therapy is, and from families too that I know, but of that gap. By that I mean, all right, I know what my parents did, and I don't want to do that, but I don't know what there is to do, and that's where that Enneal piece kind of comes in. Of here's a template, here's a guide of like what is, not just of like that. Well, we don't spank anymore, right? We don't tell you what a punishment looks like, how that is, and
Hmm.
I think there's just that gap of I don't want to do that. I'm trying to figure out what it is parenting is, and I think that gap leads to how I kind of phrase it is we're stuck in those friendship parenting roles because we know how to be a friend. We know how it feels like when I communicate with my best friend that I've known for so long. Like I know how to like be close on a friendship level. And then I think that's maybe why we see too sometimes of those kids that the parents that in that younger realm that are like, oh, it's just him being him. Just let him be free. Let him like, no. There's still a fine line of parenting. I think that's like a 1A of what I'm trying to provide and conquer and understand better is, well, what is that template? What is that guideline of being a modern day parent? Because there's still is that, well, this is what we don't do. So we don't do that. We don't say that anymore. We don't say suck it up. We don't say rub dirt on it. That's not helpful. So like knowing of like when you say something better, but we just can't be stuck in the friend zone too. I think of, because there's a, I don't hoping to say it as best I can, but try to remember exactly how it was phrased of, you know, if you are being a parent with your kid, but trying to understand what that means, then you'll be able to be a friend with them as they're an adult. If you're a friend with them at a younger stage, you'll have to try to parent them as an adult because they won't have any of the tools or understanding of how to get through life. So as much as we say of, and myself included, of that, yes, the parenting back in the day was not great by any stretch. There was something also that had being able to figure out how to do it on your own, figuring out of, that understanding of like, well, this doesn't work. I wish I would have had more emotions and warmth as a parent, but also understanding too, if there was a reason for discipline, there was a reason for, you know, taking things away, and having a kid scream and yell is okay. I'm not saying it's like in terms of spanking like that, but if you're taking a toy away or removing something or having a punishment that will make them upset, that's okay. I think I hear the opposite more than probably should have. Like that's why you see of, I know certain places even in town that had like outdoor seating areas uh, in their places, and they stopped doing that with families because it just got too much because they were just literally tearing apart the whole place. No one's saying no to kids. I think that's something of like, right, we don't tell our friends no, so I don't want to tell my kid no. But I think that's a piece of it too, is it's still okay to say no. It's still okay to pick them up and take them away from they're outside causing a ruckus and a scene of, no, that's not okay. That's not how you act. It's not how you behave. Because as I think there is that challenge of what we see with younger kids and very young adults right now, that right, they were never told no, and I think it becomes another issue in of itself, right? Of like, it's always that they want, and it's not that you're learning how to be who you are and learning what your boundaries are. It's almost as like it's a more and more and more kind of thing from what I've
Right.
seen, and that's scary on the other end of the spectrum, right? Of like, there's got to be what's the middle here. Let's try to figure out what the middle is, so we don't replicate what we did in the past, so we don't continue just trying to make friends out of adults. Like, we got to be parents, and we have to be serious sometimes and say things, and right, sometimes have our feelings hurt when our kids say, even my 8-year-old, of I don't love you anymore. That hurts, of course,
Yeah,
but
it does.
it's almost that acceptance of yourself of, that's okay. That means that you're doing something right, that you're making them upset, making them cause feelings to have, you know, a trigger reaction, that they are close enough of like, I'm trying to hurt you. So that means that you're close, that you're doing something right, and that's okay. And you know, having that conversation later when everyone's calmed down or whatever that is for you and your family. But I think that's a hidden piece in all this too, is changing, not repeating the cycle, changing it up. But I think going too far the other way too is been a little bit of an issue, as I see more and more.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So to kind of wrap up here, would you just like to give a little bit more detail or a very quick summary about Dead so that maybe people who've never heard of it um, can know what it is and come find you?
Sure. So Dadennial, the Dadennial. I don't know what it is that you said. If I just talking about age gaps of, feel like older people, like my parents' generation, that they can't say it. My mom still can't say Dadennial. For some reason, it still trips her up. I'm not certain why. But anyway, so you can find me on dadennial.com. The podcast will be uploaded there, and you can leave comments. You can subscribe. So I'm trying to work on a dad annual burnout workshop. Trying to do some classes on that. I'm on Instagram, deadennial or at deadennial, And then the YouTube channel is Dad Ennial. And then so we have on the YouTube channel, there is the podcast and we have interviews. We also have um, different like weekly videos of a mailbag with things that we get, questions that we get asked. Um, I also write on Substack, Dad O'Neill there, and then so things I think about being a dad. Then I'll put it up on YouTube with AI is very creative now. If I can just take that article and put it on a website, and they create the AI images and a better voiceover than myself, and I put those up too. So it's little mantras, kind of thoughts and feelings and things that we're even talking about of, um, you know, things of kind of being stuck or feelings of guilt, and how do you work through them. So yeah, that O'Neill's hopefully going to be able to be a larger network. Hopefully want to try to get it out there of having workshops, doing retreats, doing things where um, men of all ages can kind of come and have a safe space, so to speak, and a place where they can be themselves, but also just learn and grow and find what their balance and what their best version of themselves is.
Awesome. Thank you. And I did just want to add one little thing in case
Sure.
nobody caught on, but you mentioned that you were in the medical field
Yeah.
and you help families with all sorts of things, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do still feel these emotions. So even professionals who
Yes.
maybe help others feel what they're handle their emotions as a living,
Mm-hmm.
they are not immune to this.
No.
And I think that's a good takeaway because you know even professionals still struggle.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes I feel like we struggle even more because sometimes that over awareness, as we know so much of the constructs and the different psychological reasonings and understandings of why we act like this or why kids act like that, and it is a blessing and a curse. But I take it personally as so in regards to Dad O'Neill of I want to be able to help because I can see it from both sides. It's not just the dad that has the balance, but working with enough families and young adults, it's primarily men that are still patients of mine, and hearing their struggles day to day of like, oh, it's so I can see it and understand it from both sides, and hearing some of the common questions and common concerns and feelings and thoughts of, all right, there's something there to provide. There's something there that maybe I can start and want to build upon it to, what I said earlier of that void or gap that I felt since maybe 2017, 2018 when Me Too started, and then how we haven't heard anything new in that world in a few years now. So trying to fill that void and fill that space of, hey, here's what we can do going forward. Here's how we can you know voice it. Here's how we can find it. Here's how we can here's a go-to place of looking for those worksheets online on my website of, are you burnt out, right? Or do you have, um, suffering after postpartum of having your first kid, right? Here are some signs and symptoms. So just
Right.
trying to figure out of where it can start for men to have a place they can go and just find the information that maybe they're questioning or wanting to know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. So after hearing both stories and hearing both how both of them deal with their emotions and their guilt and anything else that comes up with them, what are some of the ways that we can handle and what do we do with all this guilt? The good news is, like we heard, it can be worked through. It doesn't have to live inside of you forever. And talk it out because guilt thrives in isolation. Ooh, I said it again. The more we keep it in, the heavier it gets. Find someone safe, a partner, a friend, a therapist, and start unpacking it. We have to stop reinforcing the idea that dads need to be stoic and emotionless to be strong. They deserve to feel supported. Sometimes we need to choose the rituals over perfection. For example, no, you don't have to be present 24/7 to make an impact. What matters the most are the small, meaningful rituals like Saturday pancakes or bedtime stories. I still remember Sunday morning breakfast with my dad and how special they felt. We get so wrapped up in trying to do everything right that we forget being present is more powerful than being perfect. And like we heard earlier, being honest with your kids and yourself is very important. Let them know in a way that they can understand that you want to be with them even when you can't, that you do make mistakes, that you do have feelings. That kind of honesty builds trust and teaches your child how to regulate their emotions. And there's no shame in saying, I need a minute, whether it's to breathe, to regroup, or to reset. That is not weakness. That's modeling emotional awareness. I said it in the mom guilt episode, but I truly believe it, so I'm going to say it again. Just like our kids are learning the world for the first time, so are we. Whether you're a mom, a dad, or a caregiver, every day is new. Every situation is a first in some way, and guilt is often just a sign that you care. To all the dads out there, you are not alone. Your guilt is valid, but it does not have to own you. All right, that's it for today. Next week, we're exploring a different kind of guilt. The guilt of not becoming a parent and the pressure to explain that choice to the world. Thank you for being here, for being human, and for letting yourself feel. Just a reminder, this podcast is all heart, not healthcare. Please talk to a professional for medical advice. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Unfiltered Feels Podcast. Share this with someone who needs it or leave a review. And don't forget, the things you're feeling, you're not alone. I'll see you next time.